You've lived a lie your whole life. But not in the way you think, not because the government is hiding something, not because the world is secretly controlled by lizard people, not even because your memories are unreliable, though they are. You're living a lie in the quietest, most ordinary way possible, and so am I. Tonight we'll take a slow, sleepy walk through the world of illusions, the lies we live with, the comforting fictions, the things we believe not because they're true, but because they help us sleep at night. So now, let the room grow quiet, let the lights dim, and drift with me into the calm, gentle world of philosophy. This is the soft truth of your everyday illusions. Every morning, without much thought, you step into a role, not a grand role, nothing fit for the stage, but one written quietly, day by day, in the margins of routine. You rise, brush your teeth, dress for the part. Maybe it's the tired office worker. Maybe it's the upbeat friend, the silent commuter, the good parent, the indifferent customer. You adjust your voice. You choose your expression. You decide how much of yourself the world will see. This, the philosopher Irving Goffman believed, is performance, but not the kind with costumes and scripts. Not exactly. It's softer, subtler, a presentation of self in everyday life. You're not lying, you're not faking, you're simply surviving in the only way society allows, by acting in ways that others expect. If you walked into work and shared your real thoughts, raw, unfiltered, how long before someone cleared their throat and looked away? If you told the cashier that you felt unmoored from existence, that the world felt like a fragile veil stretched over chaos, would they hand you your receipt or call for help? So instead, you smile. You say, "I'm good, thanks." You pretend to be fine. And so does everyone else. That's the thing about the theater of the everyday. Everyone is acting and no one breaks character. Even our environments join in. The tidy office, the blinking crosswalk, the polite, "How are you?" all designed to keep the play running smoothly, to cue us to our lines, to hold up the set. And still, somewhere deep down, you know you're acting. You feel the weight of the mask. You feel the tension between the part you play and the person you are. But you keep going, because that's what we all do. And perhaps there's a strange kind of beauty in that. The quiet agreement we all make to keep pretending together. No one announces it, no one rehearses, but somehow we all know our parts. We learn them slowly, in classrooms and family dinners and supermarket lines, and over time the mask stops feeling foreign. It starts to feel comfortable, familiar. You tell yourself, "This is who I am," but maybe it's just who you've practiced being. So when you lie awake at night, unsure of what's real, remember, this confusion isn't failure. It's awareness. Awareness of the quiet role you've been playing. Awareness that beneath the script, there may be something more. And in that realization, not panic, but peace. Because you are not alone in your performance. We are all actors. And this life is the softest play ever written. You look into the mirror every day. You catch glimpses of yourself in store windows and selfies in the silver glint of a spoon. You pause for a second, adjust your hair, straighten your back, and for a moment you think, "That's me." But it isn't, not really. The mirror reflects you in reverse. Left becomes right. Familiar features appear ever so slightly distorted, just enough to feel strange to others. The face you know is not the face the world sees. And yet, that reversed reflection becomes the version of yourself you trust most. A version shaped by repetition. A version you've studied in fluorescent bathroom light, in backseat car mirrors, in passing glances. The philosopher Jacques Lacan believed this moment. When a child first recognizes themselves in a mirror is a turning point, the mirror stage. It's when we begin to form a sense of self. But even from the beginning, it's built on an image, a surface, a projection. You think you know who you are. But what you really know is who you appear to be. You learn to monitor yourself. You start asking, do I look okay? Did I say that right? Was that too much? You check your reflection, not just in glass, but in people. You read their body language like a mirror. A smile means approval. A glance away means rejection. A raised eyebrow becomes a question about who you are. And so, piece by piece, you sculpt yourself, not from stone, but from feedback. The self becomes a collage. One part how you feel, one part how you want to be seen, and many, many parts how you believe others perceive you. But none of it is you. Not entirely. You become a performer not just for the world, but for your own mind. You curate yourself. You filter your photos. You rehearse conversations before they happen. And yet, in quiet moments, you might wonder, if no one could see me, who would I be? Most people never find out. They never reach behind the reflection. They never stop looking long enough to feel who's looking back. But beneath it all, beneath the mirror, the mask, the image, there's something quieter, something you don't need to prove, something you don't need to show. It doesn't need compliments. It doesn't flinch at disapproval. It doesn't exist in reflections. It simply watches. And that quiet watcher is you. Not the image, not the filtered version, not the person shaped by likes, glances, or childhood praise. Just presence, just being. The mirror may lie, but what you feel behind the mirror is the first soft truth. And perhaps the only one that matters. Most of what you believe, you never chose. You didn't vote on gravity. You didn't debate whether water is wet. You didn't need to be convinced that the sun rises. These things just are. You grew up surrounded by certainty, accepted truths, stable facts, invisible foundations beneath your feet. And yet there was a man, alone by a fire, who asked the question most of us are too tired to ask. What if everything I believe is false? René Descartes, a philosopher with a quiet mind and a loud question. He stripped away all assumptions. He imagined a world where his senses deceived him, where dreams were indistinguishable from waking life, where a malicious force could be feeding him lies. And when all of it had been doubted, every piece of knowledge, every belief, every bit of so-called truth, one thing remained, the act of doubting itself. I think, therefore I am. Not I eat, therefore I am. Not I have a name, not I belong to a nation. Just thought, just awareness, a quiet whisper in the dark. But modern life doesn't leave much room for doubt. It favors confidence, opinions, certainty wrapped in quick answers. We build entire identities on unexamined truths. We say, of course, to questions we never asked. But underneath every of course is a gentle invitation to pause. Of course I'm supposed to work. Of course I should be productive. Of course this is real. But what if those of courses aren't as certain as they feel? Doubt isn't failure. Doubt is a clearing, a place where you can finally see the sky. The philosopher Pyrrho of Elis practiced radical doubt. He questioned everything so thoroughly that he refused to trust even his own senses. He had to be guided across roads, not because he was blind, but because he no longer believed in the certainty of vision. Extreme, yes, but it reveals something quiet and beautiful. That certainty is not a requirement for peace. In fact, peace often begins where certainty ends. When you stop demanding truth from the world and begin sitting calmly with unknowing, life softens. You no longer need to be right. You no longer need to win arguments. You no longer panic when answers don't arrive. You learn to trust the act of questioning itself. And in that space between belief and doubt, you find a different kind of truth. Not the kind you can write down, not the kind you can prove, but the kind that comes from sitting quietly in a room, watching your thoughts float by like clouds. You don't have to destroy your beliefs. You just have to hold them gently. The world may not be certain, but your awareness of it is enough. You were born into a play already in progress. The costumes were chosen, the lines rehearsed, the rules never quite explained, but always understood. From the beginning, you were handed a script, not all at once, not even on paper, but slowly, silently, through every word spoken to you, every correction, every expectation, every smile when you did something right. You learned how to behave long before you understood why. And the truth is, most people never ask. Why do we shake hands? Why do we wear ties to funerals and white to weddings? Why is Monday for work and Sunday for rest? Why do we celebrate numbers on calendars as if they matter? These things feel natural, but they're not. They're agreed upon. John Searle, a modern philosopher, called them institutional facts. Unlike brute facts, like gravity or the color of the sky, institutional facts exist only because we say they do. Money is just paper. A border is just a line. A job title is just a phrase. They mean nothing until we all agree to treat them as something. And once we agree, they become powerful. A badge grants authority. A signature closes a deal. A diploma opens doors. But none of these things have force on their own. Their power lies in the collective belief, in the shared script. This is the world we live in. Not a world of truth, but a world of stories we've learned to take seriously. And that isn't bad. In fact, it's necessary. Without these shared illusions, cooperation would be impossible. Imagine trying to build a city if no one believed in property, or a school if no one believed in grades or learning goals, or a government if no one believed in elections, laws, or leadership. These fictions allow us to function, to organize, to belong. But the problem isn't that we live in a story. The problem is when we forget it's a story, when we treat roles like destinies, when we confuse a job with an identity, when we think a number in a bank account defines our worth. That's when the script hardens. That's when we stop living creatively and start living obediently. But if you can remember, gently, quietly, that these scripts are written, then you can also remember that they can be rewritten. Your story doesn't have to end with the role you were handed. You can improvise. You can whisper a new line. You can choose softly not to believe everything society believes about you. And in that soft rebellion, there is peace. Not in tearing down the play, but in knowing you don't have to act every part you've been given. In dreams, you are not bound by logic. You can fly without wings, speak to the dead, visit places that never existed yet feel deeply familiar. Time bends, gravity shifts, people change faces mid-sentence. And somehow, while you're dreaming, None of it seems strange. You accept it all. You participate without question. It is only when you wake up that the dream becomes absurd. Only then do you say, that wasn't real. But what makes waking life more real than a dream? In sleep you feel, you fear, you laugh. Your heart races when you're being chased. You cry when someone leaves. You feel joy, terror, longing, without any physical cause. These emotions aren't faked, they're real, even if the context isn't. The ancient Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi once dreamt he was a butterfly. He fluttered through fields, free and unaware of anything else. And when he woke up, he asked, was I Zhuangzi dreaming I was a butterfly? Or a butterfly now dreaming I am Zhuangzi? The question remains unanswered. And perhaps it should be, because maybe the goal is not to distinguish dream from reality, but to see how thin the boundary between them truly is. Your waking life is filled with dreams too. You dream of success, of recognition, of security and permanence. But these are fictions just as much as anything your sleeping mind invents. No job title can protect you forever. No relationship is guaranteed, no moment can last. And yet we live our waking hours chasing illusions, thinking they are more valid simply because we are conscious. But consciousness is not clarity. In fact, it's often the opposite. We see only fragments. Our perceptions are colored by memory, trauma, desire, and fear. Waking life, too, is a kind of dream, a collective dream, one we rarely question because we're all having it together. You wake up, drink coffee, go to work, and the world tells you, this is real, this is important, this is how things are. But in a dream, don't you hear the same voice? The voice that tells you the flying, the falling, the absurd conversation are normal? Perhaps the only difference between waking and dreaming is that one ends quietly in a bed and the other ends quietly in time. Both feel real. Both shape you. And in both there is truth. Not in the facts of the dream, but in the feelings they reveal. Dreams show us what we long for, what we fear, what we carry. And in that way, dreams are more honest than the polished script of waking life, because dreams do not care who you're pretending to be. They speak only to the part of you that has always been real. There's a common fantasy that once we discover the truth, we must act on it with fire, that we must burn down the illusions, rip off the mask, walk away from the stage. But sometimes awakening is quieter than that. Sometimes the lie doesn't need to be destroyed. It just needs to be seen. You don't need to abandon the life you've built. You don't need to scream into the void. You just need to notice. Notice the roles you play, the words you speak without meaning, the desires that were planted in you, not chosen by you. You don't need to stop. You can still go to work, still check your email, still smile at the stranger in the elevator, but do it gently, do it knowingly. Wear the mask, but feel its texture. Follow the script, but with the awareness that it was written long ago. You are not required to overthrow your life in order to live truthfully. In fact, some truths are so soft, they can only be held in silence. You've spent years becoming the person the world wanted. You shaped yourself to fit in, to be liked, to be safe. And that was necessary. That was wise. But now, you are being asked to soften again, not to harden into rebellion, but to melt into presence. Because when you truly see the lie, the performance, the illusion, the polished identity, it stops controlling you. You no longer confuse it with your worth. You no longer need every stranger to approve. You no longer panic when you feel invisible, because you remember you are already here, already whole, even when unseen. The self you've been chasing, the one that's good enough, smart enough, calm enough, was never missing. It was just covered by stories. And as those stories fall away, not with violence, but with tenderness, something still and eternal is revealed. The quiet awareness behind your thoughts, the part of you that watches without judgment, the part that never needed fixing. This is not enlightenment. This is not transcendence. This is remembering. Remembering that you were never the lie, never the job title, never the mirror, never the dream. You were always the one who noticed, and now, in the softness of this moment, you are free to let go. Not with drama, not with noise, but with the stillness of someone who no longer needs to believe. The lie will still be there tomorrow. That's okay. But tonight, you don't need it. Tonight, you can rest as the self who sees. And now, you've walked the quiet corridors of illusion. You've looked into mirrors that distort, sat in silence with the lies we wear. You've felt the soft unraveling of roles, names, and stories, and you've done it gently, without resistance, without needing to fix anything, just noticing, just witnessing, just being. It's strange, isn't it? How peaceful it can feel to let go of the need to be anyone at all. No audience to please, no truth to prove, no performance to maintain. Just stillness. A stillness that does not demand your brilliance. A stillness that does not require your success. A stillness that loves you in your unfinishedness. You have nothing to solve tonight. Nothing to justify. There is no quiz on what you've heard, no reward for remembering, no penalty for drifting off. In fact, if you've already fallen asleep, that is the highest compliment. But if you are still awake, still floating gently between thought and breath, know this: you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not less than for not living some perfect version of a truth. You are simply aware that much of life is constructed, that your name, your job, your reputation are stories, beautiful stories, useful stories, but still stories. And beneath them, there is something older, something deeper, something still. Not a character, not a mask, not a version of you that needs to be presented, just you. You before language, before expectation, before effort. You as you are, watching, listening, breathing. There is peace in knowing that you do not need to become anything else tonight. There is no higher version of you waiting. There is only this: the breath, the stillness, the sleep that follows awareness. So lie back now. Let your body be heavy. Let your mind be soft. Let the stories, the names, the truths, and the lies dissolve like mist. You're not here to be productive. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to rest, to fall, to float. Let the dream come. Let the thoughts blur. Let the light go dim. You've lived the lie, but you've also seen through it. And that is more than enough. Sleep well, sweet watcher, gentle liar. Until next time.